Rebel Ridge recently dropped on Netflix, but is it worth checking out? Welcome to Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Rebel Ridge, if you've seen it. Is it good, is it bad, or somewhere right in the middle? Let me know all that. Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already to join in the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. And so going right into the synopsis, a veteran Marine faces a corrupt town when the local law enforcement seizes his bag of money used to post his cousin's bail. And going right into positive, from the very start of this film, it takes us into this thrill ride, just sort of introducing the inciting incident, getting us right into the story, building upon the characters throughout that timeline, and getting the instances of ideas and themes of possible prejudice or other things that are going about along the way that really build suspicion on what the cops are all about and what this Marine has done in the past, getting to learn more about his character and just what we get from Aaron Pierre. His performance is demanding and really good, almost pulling off the Rambo First Blood type of vibe. What we're getting from this film as a whole, just because he's a veteran, getting to get into this small town and a cop sort of gets on his nerves and gets in the interference of what we're going through, and it's definitely different than First Blood, and its second half carries on a different vibe than the first, which goes on a different sort of adventure. What you're sort of expecting maybe from the plot, it's not predictable, which is quite good for not necessarily bringing out the biggest surprises, but being able to keep you engaged, keep you guessing where this story may be going, adding a little bit of a mystery within the second half, and just sustaining the element of justice within the ideas of morality that these characters are taking on. It doesn't go deep into the questions of what is right and what is wrong, but there's obvious right and wrong with what we're getting with these characters and the justice that is done throughout the film, where we're getting this veteran and he's getting help from a couple other people. But there's also the flip side, the cops, and you're getting some meetups within those two. And Don Johnson particularly is great within this drama world. One of his best performances I've seen from him. And so just how he builds on this drama, this thriller, and you're getting all of these other cops and members of the town that create a great supporting cast that really hones in on making the story feel more believable, almost as if it was based on a true incident, which this possibly could in some instance take place in some stretch of imagination. But what we're getting out of the characters built so naturally and well. There may be some contrivances or things here and there that don't make sense or don't line up with the rules of what cops can or cannot do, but that's also where it tests the line of morality with how these cop force just be able to sustain and detain this one prisoner and just take over certain instances and test the limits of what they don't know, of where Terry, this character played by Aaron Pierre, is just being able to outsmart them in all their different wits. And so just where that all falls in, it slowly builds its own sense of tension and also balances in all of this good drama story, all of these good sense of mystery and ideas throughout that really hones in on its craft. And when you get the fight sequences, it does well with what you're expecting out of it, while not feeling too far-fetched to the degree to which you can't necessarily enjoy the film or the flow of the story just doesn't naturally fit. And so that's what really balances in all of the different characters throughout, the mystery and the thrill of the ride that really builds itself up throughout the film and to the end. And so going right into the negatives, there's not a whole lot, but what I have to say is somewhere around the midpoint, the hour mark, it just takes a sort of different direction with where it's going with the story. It's still connected, but it still feels like it's split into two separate halves with how the vibe of the first is going, how the vibe of the second leads you into a mystery sort of vibe, that each part of the film feels really well balanced. It doesn't feel like there's too many subplots, too many things going on, but that feels like a subtle jerk that goes into a different direction and takes me slightly out of the film to make it feel a little bit too long for where we're leading up with the first and where we end up leading into the second half, which goes in an interesting new direction, but it doesn't feel like there's a direct route that is a through route. And while there's ideas that definitely work with how that flows through, the flow in the middle just doesn't quite line up, because you sort of expect to see the predictability of where things are headed once certain things are adding up, even though the general details of the story aren't predictable to begin with. It still falls in the direct route for the general essence of the story, what you're setting up with the character, what you're setting up with the villains, and how that leads into the end, correcting moralities and justice, getting revenge on the cops in their own sense. And so it just creates this own sort of weird essence to the film, just that subtle jerk of a turn of events that leads you into something that you sort of expected, but it also takes its own sort of route of not being a style you expect and a turn of the story that you expect, which can be a little bit complicated and difficult to explain without, if you haven't seen it yourself, knowing what I'm talking about. But there's just some aspects that just doesn't have a through route all the way through, even if as a whole I do really enjoy this film, and therefore I have to rate Rebel Ridge a simply 7.5 out of 10. That's just my personal thoughts on Rebel Ridge. Let me know down in the comments below, have you seen Rebel Ridge? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Or is it somewhere right in the middle? Or if you waited for this review to help you decide if you're going to see it or not. That's just all, and make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.